Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Abiola, and in today's video we'll be recreating the dress that you have on the screen. Yeah, you already saw the outcome at the beginning of this video. This is the first part of two tutorials. This is the drafting of this dress, and the second part will be where I join everything together to form what you can see. So guys, without wasting so much time, let's just go straight into the drafting of this dress. The first thing we are going to do is to mark out all our vertical measurements and label them. I am going to label the shoulder area SL, and I'm going to mark my bust point, which is 10 inches. From my shoulder to my bust is 10 inches, so I'm going to mark 10 inches. From my shoulder to my under bust is 13 inches. I marked it. From my shoulder to my waist is 16 inches, and I added 0.5 inch allowance. I'll go again and mark the same thing. 10 inches bust point, under bust 13 inches, waist 16, then the allowance 16.5. This is to enable me get a straight line. I'll connect the lines, and the first one I'm going to label it bust point as in BP. The second one is my under bust. I'll label it UB. The third is my waistline. I'll label it WL. Then the last line, which is the allowance line, I'm going to label it A. Okay, the next step is to mark my shoulder width divided by 2. My shoulder is 15 divided by 2 will give 7.5. So I went ahead to mark 7.5 on the shoulder line, and our shoulder is not straight, so I'll go down by 1 inch from that point. Then the neck width I'm working with is 3 inches. After marking that, I'll connect that 3 inch to that 1 inch point, and that will be our neck width and shoulder slope. The next step is to calculate my armhole line, and I will do that by dividing my bust by 6 plus 1.5 inches. My bust is 38 divided by 6 plus 1.5 gives me 7.8, but approximately 8 inches. That's what I'm going to be using. So I marked 8 inch from the shoulder slope. I'll go ahead to roll that out into a straight line, and I'm going to label that armhole line as in AHL. So guys, the same thing I marked on my shoulder, that's 15 divided by 2, which is 7.5. I'll mark it at this point as well, and I'll roll that to form the straight line. The next step is for us to create our front armhole curve, and we are going to do that by dividing what I have on this line by 2. We have 8 divided by 2 is 4, so I'm going to go ahead now and mark that 4 inch point. Then I'll go in from that 4 inch point by 0.5 inches, after which on the armhole line I am going to divide my bust by 4. My bust is 38 divided by 4 is 9.5 inches. We will need to mark that 9.5 inches before we can fully create our front armhole curve. So I'll go ahead now and connect the point. After connecting the point, that forms our front armhole curve. The next step is to mark my new neckline, okay, where I want my neckline to start, and I marked 8 inches. So I marked 8 inches and I connected that to form a straight line, and I labeled this NL as a neckline. Okay, so the next step now is to create the shoulder I want. So from the edge of that shoulder, I'm going to go ahead and mark 2.5 inches inward. Then I will go in with my curved ruler and connect from that shoulder to the neckline. The line should not be too curvy, but it should be a bit curvy so that it rests on your neckline when you wear the clothes. Don't make it straight so that it's not gaping. The next step is to take in our darts. My nipple to nipple measurement is 8 inches. That is, my bust span is 8 inches. I will divide what I have by 2, and I have 4 inches, but I'll add 0.5 inches and mark that. So I marked 4.5 on the new neckline and 4.5 on the waistline, and I connected them to form a straight line. On the neckline, I will go up by 1 extra inch,
which you can see, and on that neckline area I will go in by 0.5 inches. That is what I marked. Then I will use my curved ruler to connect from that 0.5 inch that we went in to that 1 inch that we went up by. I hope that is explanatory. Then I'll connect the other side and just, taper it in with the normal armhole. Can we all take a moment to look at the screen? Here is the dart intake that we'll be working with. If your bust is within 32 to 36 inches, you'll be taking 1.5 inches. If your bust is from 36 to 42, you'll be taking a dart of 2 inch. 43 and above is 2.5. My bust is 38, so I'll be taking a dart of 2 inches. On the waistline, I'm going to take 1 inch on both sides. The same way you see me doing, I'm going to mark 1 inch towards the center front and the second 1 inch towards the side front area. I marked the same thing on the under bust area as well, and I will go ahead and connect them. On the bust line, I'm going to come down by 1 inch, then I'll go in with my curved ruler and connect the points just exactly how you see me doing. Please endeavor not to make this part too curvy, and do not make it too straight either. Just let it be in between, just a little curvy, a little straight. Okay, can we all take a moment to look at the outline on the screen? For small bust size, we're going to be taking 0.5 on both sides. For a medium bust size, which is where I fall into, I'll be taking 0.5 and 0.75 on that point. For a big busted person, you take 0.5 on 1 inch. So for me, with a bust of 38, I'm going to mark 0.75 at this side, and in the middle towards the center front I'll mark 0.5, just like I explained. I'll then go up by 1 inch from my bust point and connect the points using my curved ruler. Like I said, the line shouldn't be too curvy and it shouldn't be straight either. So let us create the keyhole neckline, and from that neckline area I would go up by 1 inch. I marked that. Then I'll take my curved ruler and connect from that 1 inch to the neckline area. Note, this part depends on how wide you want your keyhole to be. For me, I wanted 1 inch. You can do 0.5, you can do 0.75, okay? Then from that dart that I took, I'll mark 1.5 inch, okay? Then I'll connect from the 1 inch I took upwards to that 1.5 inch that I took after the dart. So I'll connect the points carefully. Using my marker, I went ahead to ensure that there was no pointed edge, after which I labeled every part of this pattern paper. I labeled them A, B, and C. So guys, time to take all our horizontal measurements, okay? The first thing is to measure out the dart that I have at that neckline area. That one that I marked 0.5 and 0.75. I'll measure what I have there, which is about 1.25, okay? After measuring that, I'll go ahead and mark that 1.25 at that armhole line area. We just need to take note of that allowance, okay? Then I went ahead to insert the allowance I'll be working with, which is 2.5 inches, but I later felt that 2.5 inches was too much, so I reduced it to 2 inch, okay? Which is why you will see a lot of point. I reduced it to 2 inch, so please, the allowance I'm working with is 2 inches. On my underbust is 32 divided by 4, which is 8. I marked 8. Then the allowance we took at that point, which is 2 inch. Then my proper allowance, which is 2 inches. On my waist is 30 divided by 4. That's 7.5. I marked it. I marked the 2 inch dart that we took, and I also marking my 2 inch allowance. I marked the same thing that I marked on the waist on that allowance line, and I went ahead to connect everything. I went ahead to label the center front, which we'll be cutting out on fold, and we'll be cutting out 1 piece of A and 2 pieces of B for the main fabric. And for the lining, we're going to cut out an extra piece of A and an extra piece of B. This implies that we're cutting out 4 pieces of B and 2 pieces of A. Then for part C, I thought I was going to be able to cut it out on fold, but turns out that was not possible. So we're going to cut out 4 pieces of part C, 2 for the lining and 2 for the main fabric, okay? Guys, just chill before you cut out this thing. Chill. There was something we ought to do before cutting out, so just chill before you cut out yours. So I went ahead to cut out everything, just the way you see me doing. Then I made the correction that we were supposed to make. It's just something very little, but just pay attention, okay? All the places I'm marking with my red marker are the places we're going to be adding 0.5 inch when we cut on fabric. So I am using my red marker to mark all those places. The next thing now is the correction. Guys, as you can see, we're cutting 2 for lining and 2 for the main fabric. So we're cutting a total of 4 for this C. Okay, now to this important step which will prevent shortage of fabric when you finish joining your bustier. I'll place B on an empty pattern paper and I will use my sellotape to hold it down. Okay, so that we took at that point, that 1.25 inches, we're supposed to also mark it at that neckline area, but I decided to mark 1.5 instead. So on that neckline area, I'll extend the line and mark 1.5 at that point and just connect that to the armhole. That's just it. We ought to have done this before cutting this, and that's why I told you guys to chill first. Okay, so here is everything we're going to be cutting out. Now let's work on the back pattern. I'll go ahead and mark 1 inch from beginning to the end for my zipper allowance. I'll connect that and label that point my zip allowance. Okay, now let's mark the same thing we marked in front. The neck width we used in front was 3 inches, which I'll mark. Shoulder width 7.5, that's 15 divided by 2. I'll mark that as well. Okay, so I also came down by 1 inch because the shoulder is not straight, and I'll connect. Okay, now we are going to also create a back armhole. Okay, then I'll mark that 7.5 again on the armhole line and connect. Okay, now the midpoint is 4, just like we did, but we're not going in by 0.5. Then I'll mark my bust divided by 4, which is 9.5, just like we marked in front, and I'll connect the points, and that forms the back armhole. My round under bust is 32. 32 divided by 4 is 8 inches, so I marked 8 inches. And I went ahead to connect the under bust to the armhole area. My waist is 30. 30 divided by 4 is 7.5, so I marked that. The same thing on the allowance line, and I connected the point. Okay, now the next step is to mark my dart. My dart that I took in front is 4 inches. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead now and mark 4 inches. Here we're not adding 0.5 inch allowance. Okay, I marked 4 inch from the waistline to the bust point, and I connected that to form a straight line. Okay, I'll come down by 1 inch from the bust point, and I'll take 0.5 inch on both sides of the line. I'll connect the point. That implies that we took a 1 inch dart. Now let's mark our allowance and the dart intake. Okay, my allowance, if you remember from the front, is 2 inches, so I marked 2 inches. On the under bust, I also marked 2 inches, but I also took into consideration the dart that we took at this point, which is about 0.5 inches, so that we will not be short of fabric. On the waistline, I also marked 2 inch allowance, and I also took in the 1 inch dart that we took on the waistline, and I marked it. I'll go ahead now and connect all the points. Okay, the same way we did in front, I will go ahead and mark 2.5 inch on the shoulder area, and my back neck depth, I want it to be 10.5 inches. I'll go ahead and mark 10.5 inches, and I'll connect the points using my curved ruler. Okay, you can make this back anyhow you want it, but this is what I want for my back. Okay, now to get rid of zipper bulge, at that point I'll go in by 1/2 inch and I will connect to the top part. This is going to get rid of our zipper bulge, but there's one more thing we need to do to get rid of zipper bulge. At that point, I'm going to go up by 0.5 inches, and I'll connect from that point to the side seam area, just the way you see me doing. This is what I do all the time to get rid of zipper bulge. Now I'm going to use my red marker to mark out all the points that we'll be cutting out. Okay, then I'll go ahead now to cut out my back pattern, and I'll also label it before cutting out. Anyway, for the back pattern, we're going to be cutting the back pattern in 2 places. We're cutting 2 pieces of that. We're also going to cut out a facing for that part, just to turn the neckline. Okay, so now let's move to the skirt part. The first thing I'm going to do is to mark 1/2 inch at the top. This 1/2 inch is what I will use to join the skirt part to the bustier. Okay, so I'm going to, that's like our allowance, so I'm going to connect the points. The next step is to mark my hip point, which is my waist to the widest part of my hip, which is 10 inches. So I'll go ahead now and mark 10 inches. I'll mark it at the other end again just to get a straight line, and I'll connect the points. And I'll label that HP as in hip point. Then I'll go ahead to mark 12 inches as my skirt length. I'll connect the lines and label that part SL as in skirt length. My waist is 30 divided by 4 is 7.5. I'll go ahead and mark 7.5 on my waistline. I'll mark 1 extra inch for that. If you want to add that, please mark extra inch. I had wanted to use 1.5 inch as my skirt allowance, but I went ahead to mark 2 inches instead. My hip circumference is 41 divided by 4 gives me 10.25, so I went ahead to mark 10.25 at that point, and I added 2 inches seam allowance. Okay, then I'll go ahead to connect that point with my curved ruler. Then I'll go ahead to extend the curve to that skirt length area. Okay, so guys, I'm going to mark my dart 4 inches, take 1/2 inch on both sides, and the length of the dart is 5 inches, and I'll connect the points. On the side seam area, I would go ahead and mark 4.5 inches from the waistline, and I would connect the points to form the circular basque. You can actually make this any shape you want, but because we are recreating this exact picture, I'm going to just connect it exactly how it should be connected. Okay, then I'll go ahead to add 0.5 inch seam allowance round that part where I'll be joining the gathers, and I'll cut out all the points. Okay, yeah. Before we go ahead to cut out the back, there's one adjustment we need to make at the front, even though we will not cut it out yet. I'll come down by 1/2 inch at that point and connect that point to the side seam. This is just going to give it an extra fit. It will also get rid of the excess allowance usually found at the stomach area. It's going to just give it fit basically. So I'll connect that to the side seam, but we're not cutting it off now until we are done cutting the back. For the back pattern, the first step is to mark out the zipper allowance, and I'll be marking 2 inches from beginning to the end. Then I'll label the zipper allowance area, zipper allowance, and I'll go ahead and place the front pattern on top of it and extend all the lines. To ensure that the zipper allowance on the top part and the skirt part matches, I'm going to bring this and measure what I have there, which is 0.5 inch, and I'll mark that 0.5 inch. If you remember, our zipper allowance is actually 1 inch, but when we got rid of zipper bulge, that's when we got to have that 1/2 inch at the top. So I'll mark 1 inch on the hip line, but I'm going to add 0.5 inch for the butt curve. So I'm going to mark 1.5 inch at that bum area. That's the hip line. Then I'll go ahead to connect from the waist to the hip area. On this skirt length, I'll take 1 inch at that point and connect from that skirt length to the hip area. Then I'll go ahead to cut out everything I have. Okay, I will cut out the zipper area. Then for the front, I'll trace out that red part I told you guys. I'll also go ahead to label the back pattern, and I'll also mark the back dart. If you remember, we used 4 inches. I'll go ahead and mark 4 inches and take 1/2 inch on both sides of the line. The length of this dart is also going to be 5 inches. So I'm going to mark 5 inches and connect all the points together. So guys, here are all the things we've drafted so far, and in our next video I'll be showing you how to cut out everything on fabric and how to join everything to form this lovely dress. At this point, if you haven't subscribed, do well to hit the subscribe button, and do not forget to turn on post notification bell so that you will be the first to receive the sewing version when I post it. So see you guys in my next tutorial. Bye.